Ugh. Jeez. What happened? Was I in some kind of hangover or something? No, that's not right. I don't drink. Jeez, what could have happened? Oh, hey man. Did you hear that Metroid Dread came out? Excuse me, what the Ooh, I've been waiting to play this bad boy for a long time. Hey, I mean, that was pretty good. Oh yeah, that's right. I received that copy of Metroid Dread and I played it, and it was so good that I must have blacked out afterwards, and now I've been here for a very long time. Man, things just haven't been the same lately. So much stuff is going on. I'm rapidly changing. I'm way more busy than I normally am. Things have just been so difficult for me lately. I just don't know what to do. Stop! What on earth are you going on about? Oh, hey, sorry. Things have just been really different and weird lately. I haven't really known what to do for a while. Oh, well, that's understandable. Life can be rather stressful sometimes, and it can be difficult not knowing what to do. I think that maybe you should try overcoming a challenge. Dark Souls! Wait, what?
In recent years, there's been somewhat of a birth of a new game genre for specific action RPG games, and that is a term called a Souls-like. What is a Souls-like? It's whatever the fuck this is. Dark Souls is not just a title to describe a game's difficulty level, but it's actually the title of an actually fully fledged video game primarily headed by Hidetaka Miyazaki and the geniuses over at From Software. Oh, and also published by Bandai Namco. I keep forgetting that this is actually their thing. Now, this isn't From Software's first game by any means, nor is it even the first game in the Souls series. The first real game in the Souls series is Demon's Souls, released exclusively for PS3 and recently remade for the PS5. However, Dark Souls is the spiritual successor, or some may even say sequel, to Demon's Souls. But to be honest, this was sort of the game that popularized the genre, and just From Software in general. I am no stranger to the Soulsborne series, which is what Demon's Souls, Dark Souls trilogy, Bloodborne, and Elden Ring are referred to as. I've played and beaten all of these games, and to celebrate the recent release of From Software's biggest release to date, Elden Ring, I thought it'd be interesting to take a look back at the game that made From Software's name so damn popular in the first place, to see if it's any good. Take a guess. Oh, and also, no Dark Souls jokes this video. It's old, I'm keeping my word on that.
Alright, so strap in everyone. This is going to be quite the ride. Also, I should mention, Dark Souls heavily benefits from a blind first playthrough. So I should mention that this video will have lots of spoilers in it. That's just kind of how I do things. I like to talk about my experiences with the game, and I like talking about every single aspect of it. So there will be spoilers, kind of scattered throughout the video, more so towards the end, but they'll be scattered about and there will be gameplay spoilers here and there. Just how I do things. Let's go.
Dark Souls tells the story of the Age of Fire, where Gwyn and a bunch of other lords killed a bunch of dragons, and since the fire's burning out and only a few embers remain, the world is about to be plunged into darkness. However, we wake up in our jail cell awaiting the end of the world, to find someone attempting to save us by tossing a key to break us out. He later dies and tells us that we need to relight the torch to keep the flames going so the world doesn't end. Go. I probably just gave the shittiest plot summary in the West, but there really aren't a lot of cutscenes in Dark Souls. We're given a bit of exposition as to what's happening in the land of Lordran, and we're given a chance to go make a difference. Our main drive to do what we need to do being the guy who helped us escape the prison. It's a simple enough incentive to keep the players motivated to take the path of doing what we think is right. Hard to really say if you're a hero or not in this one. The world in this game is pretty fucked up. That's not to say the game doesn't have story. If you want to get more out of this game's story, you'll have to go in depth. Read those descriptions of items, talk to those NPCs, and piece it all together. With all of this combined, Dark Souls makes Lordran one of the most memorable worlds in gaming. I really want to go more in-depth with this in a second on why I think Lordran is such a fascinating world, both narratively and structurally, but that requires getting into stuff like side quests, gameplay, and potential spoilers. Basically, the main takeaway is that on a surface level, Dark Souls' story seems minimalistic, but if you want, you can dig deeper into it, and there's a whole lot more to uncover if you go out of your way.
I'm glad this game doesn't have much of a story. I feel like it'd be very cringe if there was too much dialogue in this game. Soleil-sama, we must stop Gwyn and his evil forces from spreading the darkness around the world! Let's go!
I think it's best if we start talking about the actual game itself. Dark Souls is an action RPG. You'll explore many areas, meet new faces, and battle big bad enemies. You choose a class in the beginning and customize your character however you'd like. You'll start off in the Undead Asylum with nothing but a broken straight sword, but here, if you read the messages on the ground, the game teaches you the basic moveset like running, dodging, blocking, and attacking. You'll encounter your first boss, the Asylum Demon, which you could try to fight with the broken sword, but you do piss damage, so the most sensible thing to do would be to run into the nearby open door to grab your weapons, Estus Flask, and get into a position to land a sweet, crucial hit on the Asylum Demon for massive damage. As long as you aren't me, who missed on this playthrough. I'm rusty, okay? This is a great tutorial area, though, I have to say. It does a great job of teaching you the basics without feeling too hand-holdy. Plus, it doesn't ever stop the action just to show a text bubble with instructions. They're there if you want them, but it's not necessary to read for a veteran's playthrough. Once you're out of the tutorial area, though, you're mostly on your own to figure the rest out. You can level up, but that's really the last thing it tells you to do before you're left to figure out how progression works in this game. There are two major things you're going to be doing in Dark Souls: exploration and boss fighting. Lordran is somewhat open in structure, but not entirely in design. I wouldn't necessarily call Dark Souls an open world game, since most of the game's paths are fairly linear. There's just a bunch of different paths you can go down, but it is pretty clear that the game wants you to go in a specific way for at least the first half. Then the game actually does have open progression during the latter half of the adventure. And so it's time to set off on my adventure, as I am the big, strong, great sword wielder with no pants. There'll be some bigger and smaller enemies to fight on your path. Sometimes they're insignificant, and other times they'll chase you to the ends of the fucking earth and bitch slap you when all you're trying to do is reach the damn bottom. I'm getting ahead of myself. When you're running around the world in Dark Souls, usually you're either trying to make it through a dungeon to reach a boss fight while fighting enemies, or you're exploring. And I gotta tell you, I really like exploring in this game. When I've leveled up my weapons and skills enough to feel like I can break off the main path for just a second, it's really fun looking for secrets in hidden areas you may not have even known existed. The game does reward you for checking all the corners of each area, whether it be with extra souls, materials needed to upgrade your weapons, or consumable items to help you out in battle. Then there's the times where you're actually trying to progress through each area, and it's all very fun to do because almost each area has really great and memorable level design. I seriously don't even mind that there isn't a map in this game, since I can remember exactly how to get to each area on foot, although you will be required to travel on foot because for the first half of the game, you don't have the ability to warp between bonfires. Alright, I should probably explain what the bonfires are. These are the game's checkpoints. Resting at them not only restores your health and healing items, but it also revives all the enemies in the area except for bosses and mini-bosses. They're scattered all across Lordran, and they can either be in obvious locations or places you'll have to go out of your way to get to. If you die, then you'll respawn at the last bonfire you rested at. Although if you warp to a bonfire, you have to rest at it in order to respawn at it, which is sort of annoying to be honest, since if you don't rest at it, you'll have to spend some extra time reloading the area. But other than that blemish, the spacing of these bonfires is perfect in my opinion. They aren't too far apart, and they aren't too close together to where they feel pointless. Each of them feel well placed for a fair bit of running back to a spot if you die, but nothing where it feels too tedious. But back on the areas themselves, I honestly don't think there's a badly designed area at all in this game. Yeah, there are some annoying areas like Blighttown and the first part of Anor Londo, but each area has great level design with well-placed obstacles, good enemy spots to make each area challenging, and plenty of secrets if you're keeping an open eye, like illusionary walls that you can hit to reveal a hidden area. Although there are some portions where you can clearly tell they just copy-pasted the same boss enemy over and over, but it's at a point in the game where it doesn't feel like total bullshit. Lots of optional locations too. If you read about the world and check a bunch of different corners, you'll find some really jaw-dropping optional areas. Like if you go back to the tutorial area and get a peculiar doll, you can jump into a giant painting that is an entire exclusive area you can explore. It's not massive, but I mean, it's something. While we're on the topic of exploring the world, you'll find some NPC characters, and almost all of the major ones have their own questline and things that they do. This is one of my favorite parts of the world of Dark Souls. If you talk to each NPC that aren't people used for shops, they're all doing something of their own in Lordran, and you could try and help them out as an optional side quest. An example of the one I did for this playthrough was for a character named Solaire, who is a fan favorite in the community. Such a chill guy who gives you the white sign soapstone used for the game's co-op, more on that later, and you can spot him multiple times on your adventure. He'll appear in Anor Londo, and after you beat these two, he'll set off for the Demon Ruins to find the sun. It's not really clear what his mission is, but if you leave him be to continue his mission by himself, he'll get himself killed by these disgusting things, and you'll have to fight a corrupted version of him. But you can save him if you spend 30 humanity on this Spider Girl's Covenant, which will grant you access to a door that will lead you to a place you can kill the disgusting things before he gets there. Not exactly a thrilling end to his questline, but at least he's not dead. Not everyone in Lordran is all buddy-buddy though. Some of them are rotten and desperate. This guy named Patches actually tries to kill you twice to scrap the remains from your corpse, but his attempts are rather lame, so you can befriend him out of forgiveness, unless if you tell him he's the thing he's trying to hunt down, then he'll try and kill you still. And then there's Lautrec. This guy escapes his prison after you clap the bell gargoyles and lies in Firelink Shrine. However, he's there to actually kill the Firekeeper inside of this cage. If you do not stop him, he will kill her, which will actually prevent you from leveling up your Estus Flask with her. So every time I play, I always just kick him off the edge and then restart the game to pick up his remains. He drops one of the best rings in the game, so I just do it anyways. Point being, there's always something happening in Lordran. There's always stuff that these people are doing, and that's what makes this world so fascinating to plunge yourself into and explore.
Exploration. I'd like to explore the inside of Solaire's buttocks.
But when you're not exploring each area, you're doing one of the more popular activities in Dark Souls. Fighting big, bad, and scary bosses. This is where the game's combat system really comes into play. You can fight enemies a lot in the overworld, But the many boss fights in this game are the real showcase of the game's combat. It admittingly took me a while to figure out how the combat effectively works in this game back when I first played it, but now I'd say I very much have a grasp on how it works. This isn't like other action RPGs where you can just chain together massive combos on enemies in the most stylish way possible. Dark Souls, in comparison, is a much more patient action RPG. If you aren't paying attention, bosses can absolutely destroy you if you aren't paying attention to their movesets and attack patterns. Two effective methods of avoiding enemy attack are blocking and dodging. Blocking attacks with your shield can either decrease the amount of damage you take from an attack or straight up not take any damage. But blocking does leave you stunned for about half a second, and it costs a good chunk of stamina sometimes to block an enemy attack. And if you run out of stamina when you block an enemy, then you'll leave yourself wide open for them to deal massive damage on you, so don't block too much. But dodging is much more of a risk, but ultimately a lot more effective if you can get the timing down with each boss and enemy's attack patterns. Dodging through or away from an enemy attack will grant you with a few milliseconds of invincibility frames to completely avoid an attack with the cost of a small amount of stamina and leaving yourself open for just a little bit after the roll. So if you mistime your dodge, it could really punish you. Though it's fast, effective, and probably the best way to avoid attacks if you can get the timing down for each boss, which is really satisfying to do, by the way. Though in this game, you can only dodge in 4 directions when locking onto an enemy, so sometimes trying to dodge through enemy attacks can feel a bit jank at times. Other than that, dodging is usually how I roll with these boss battles.
Nice.
Although you can't just dodge with the most powerful stuff in the game. The speed of your dodge depends on your equip load, so weapons, shields, rings, and especially armor all affect your character's weight. If you're wearing light or no clothes, you'll dodge at the fastest and most effective speed. If you have some kind of medium leather-like clothes, you'll have an okay dodge that isn't the best in terms of leaving yourself open afterwards. And then if you're wearing something like knight's armor, you'll be breaking your back trying to dodge out of the way of an enemy with only a small number of invincibility frames and a large moment of vulnerability.
Alright, world of Dark Souls, I am very well protected right now. It's time to show you what I'm made of now that I have all this protection. Oh my god. Oh my god. I can do a dodge roll. Oh god.
Of course, it isn't just the clothes you wear, it also depends on how heavy your weapons are. So if you're using a big heavy weapon like I am, you'll have to sacrifice some clothes for a fast dodge. I'm not just naked for no reason. Oh, and there's also sometimes a third thing you can do. If you're fighting a regular sized humanoid enemy, you can use the left trigger to parry an enemy attack at the right time and riposte them with massive damage. And it's incredibly broken in this game. All you have to do to parry enemies in this game is push the button right when their weapon lands on you, and while sometimes they can fake you out with a slow attack, the window is incredibly manageable and it's the most effective way of killing enemies if you're using a standard sword and shield build. Don't get me wrong, it's fun as hell to do, but still it's pretty broken with how easily parryable some of these enemies are. But that's just avoiding the enemy attack. When they're open after their attack, then you'll want to swing your weapon at them. Like I said earlier, there aren't really any kind of fancy combos you can pull off in this game. Instead, you have light attacks and heavy attacks. You can try to hit the enemy with multiple faster, lighter attacks, or if you think they're super vulnerable, you can try to slam a heavy attack on them for a bit more damage. Though there aren't just melee weapons, you can also cast magic depending on your stats and shoot a bow and arrow for range attacks, but melee weapons are the majority in this one. Though if you're low on health and want to ensure your victory, you'll have healing Estus flasks with an unlimited regeneration when you rest at a bonfire, but limited uses until you reach one. Finding a time to get a quick heal-in is crucial to these fights, and it can be harder to heal sometimes than landing a hit since you're incredibly vulnerable when healing. I know I'm making this sound way more complicated than it really is, but trust me, When you figure it out, it flows way better than it sounds. Dodge and smack them enough times until their health bar is gone. Most of the bosses in this game are fantastic, easily the most memorable parts of the game, and they put up a moderate challenge. Okay, that's it. I've been dancing around the bush long enough. I wanted to touch on everything else before so I can establish that Dark Souls isn't all about this, but Dark Souls is a hard game. It's kind of brutal, actually, at least your first time around. Whenever you take damage in this game, it sounds like the character is getting off. While the people who've played it remember Dark Souls for its incredible world building, great ways of storytelling, and great boss battles, the majority associate Dark Souls with how difficult it is. And you will die. You will die a lot. If you are not paying attention, this game is going to kick your ass time and time again. However, for the most part, it's not frustrating. Most of the obstacles and bosses Dark Souls has to offer are completely fair in their design, and they're all readable and manageable. The game never feels impossible. Even the bosses Ornstein and Smo, a duo fight that was previously considered to be the hardest boss in the game, is a well-designed and balanced fight so it doesn't feel undoable, and in my opinion, it's one of the better 1v2 boss battles in gaming out there. Ornstein is the fast spear wielder that ensures you have to stay on your toes, while Smo is the big chunky hammer wielder who is considerably slower but can deal massive damage if you aren't paying attention. And depending on who you defeat first, the other one gets their health fully restored and are given a considerable buff in their moveset. It's a really well done duo boss that, even though it's extremely difficult, it's definitely manageable and fun. Almost every death in this game feels like it is my fault because I didn't do something properly. Although, there are some exceptions, even some as early as the first few moments of the game.
A complaint? People are gonna think I hate this game!
The Capra Demon, which is likely the fourth boss you may face, is incredibly flawed. The area already has these super annoying dog enemies, and not only is the arena for this fight extremely small and claustrophobic, but there are two dog enemies in the arena that will attack you straight up and lock you into a combo where your entire health bar drains in the first 2 seconds of the fight. It'd be a fine boss if it weren't for these annoying dog enemies, but all it does is create bullshit difficulty instead of a fair and fun challenge. The Centipede Demon suffers with the tiny arena issue too, since you barely have any room to work with if you don't kill one of the centipedes on its back that gives you a ring that majorly buffs lava resistance, which is a required item in order to even traverse the Lost Izalith. And the biggest example of bull in this game is the Bed of Chaos. Probably the worst boss battle in the entire series. Such a cool and unique design that plays a huge part into the lore of this game. As the fight itself,
Complete piss.
is an awful rush over to two sides to disable shields while getting swept into a bottomless pit only to do some goddamn platforming and one-shot the real thing inside. If there was a checkpoint right outside the boss gate, it wouldn't be as annoying, but when you do die to this boss, you have to spend over a minute running back to it and down this really long slide just to get a chance at disabling the shields and getting to the center again, but you're likely just gonna fucking die again anyway. The only good thing about this boss is the character design and the fact that you don't have to destroy the shields you've already destroyed again. Other than that, worst fight in the series. I hated this boss. Oh, and there's also this part after the second boss where a dragon flies by and basically insta-kills you if you run along this bridge. They don't place a checkpoint before that, so that's kind of baloney. But to be honest, those are really the only instances of bullshit in this game, in my opinion. The rest of the bosses feel completely fair, and at worst a bit annoying to run back to. The only thing I don't like about fighting bosses in this game is the dodging thing I mentioned earlier. Dodging in 4 directions feels pretty jank after playing later entries in this series. Now, I don't want to undermine the importance of Dark Souls' difficulty. It's absolutely one of the reasons why Dark Souls became so popular, and one of the reasons why it's so good. It's just not the main approach of it. It's just another reason why Dark Souls is as good as it is. And you can't forget, this ain't an RPG without those experience points. How about those experience points? Well, there isn't any. You do get currency in the form of souls, though. You earn souls from killing enemies, finding consumable souls in hidden spots, and you get a ton of them for killing bosses. Using souls, you can buy things from the game's many shops and use them as items or spend them to upgrade weapons and other tools. However, you do need to be careful, because if you die, you'll lose all of them upon death. And when you die, you're given a chance to get them back by collecting them from the spot you last died at. Although if you die again before you can get them back, you can kiss those souls goodbye because they are gone forever. And why is this a big deal, you may ask? Because not only are souls your currency, you can also use them to level up and increase your stats. Yes, the currency and experience points are the same thing in this game, and you can only level up at a bonfire. So if you have a huge amount of souls, you better level up at the nearest bonfire possible, because damn it, you're gonna need them. Even though this may seem unfair to some, honestly, I think it's a great incentive to not get killed. It encourages a cautious play style, and considering the stuff that can happen in this game, that's kind of a positive in my book. It's good when a game gives you a reason to not die without it feeling tedious, for the most part. And that's basically the gist of the gameplay loop, but there is one other thing to bring up. If you don't like the idea of taking on all these challenges by yourself, then you can always dive into the game's co-op. Well, it's sort of co-op. Not entirely. It's weird how it works. Right now, as I'm making this video, the servers for all of the Dark Souls games on Steam are temporarily under maintenance, so I had to play this one offline, unfortunately, for this video. But I'll explain how co-op works since I've done plenty of it in the past. Okay, so you see this top left corner of the UI? This counter is your humanity. When it's grayed out, you are hollow. You can't use any online functionalities to connect with other people in the world. However, if you have 1 or more humanity, you can go to a bonfire to reverse your hollowing and become human again. When you're human, not only can you spend more humanity to kindle certain bonfires to increase the maximum amount of Estus flasks you gain from resting at that specific bonfire, but you can also interact with summon signs to summon NPC characters to help fight for you, or actual players to help fight bosses with you. You can explore the specific area while the summons are there, but they go away after you beat the boss of that area, and you'll need to summon them in the next area in order to continue playing with them. Having multiple players may sound like it makes the game easier, and it does, but they do attempt to balance it out by increasing the amount of HP bosses have while summons are there, depending on how many you have. Honestly, I know there's a saying of everything is better with friends, but I'd say it's actually personal preference here whether you like playing solo or with some buds. Either way of playing is still great, but playing by yourself sort of shows the game's true challenge with all the bosses and avoiding the attack patterns. While on co-op, you sort of just wail on the boss while another player distracts it. Both are fun and good ways to play the game, but I can see why other people prefer just doing it solo. Also, don't be that guy that shames people for playing the game in co-op instead of playing it single player. You spent $40 on the game, you're allowed to play it how the hell you want, god damn it. However, if you do choose to go the online route, there is a major thing to look out for that evens the odds. Invasion. While you're human, you're vulnerable for some nasty players to come fuck you up for their own rewards and your failure. NPCs can do this too, but they're way easier than the players are. If you can defeat the invader, you'll be rewarded with souls and humanity. Either way, I think this is a decent way to even the odds when it comes to multiplayer in this game. Having multiple people will obviously make the game easier, so it's interesting to balance things out with players that intend to help you and players that intend to destroy you. Normally with randoms, you need to be within 10 levels of each other, but if you're playing with friends in the remastered version, type in a matching network password and you can play the whole game together, no matter how far apart in progress you are. And if you want to fight another player, you can get an optional red sign soapstone that lets you have players that intentionally summon you to fight each other, and vice versa if you can find a red sign. Normally people with these signs like to participate in an honorable duel. Okay, so what this means in the community is that if two players bow to each other, then that means you'll be fighting with honor in a 1v1 battle with no healing. You'll be surprised with how many players want to have an honorable battle with you. It's not a mechanic of the game or anything, but it's just a fun little thing people in the community do, so I thought I'd mention it. Holy crap, that was a long explanation of the gameplay of Dark Souls. So now I want to talk about some other aspects of Dark Souls, like the presentation and aesthetics. And you know what? For an Xbox 360 PS3 game in 2011, this game looks gorgeous. The character models are well done, the boss designs are amazing, and I love the locales of this game. There's a lot of cool methods of foreshadowing in this game, like right in the very beginning, if you look to the right down the first hallway, you can see the optional stray demon boss marching around behind bars, or in the demon ruins, you can see the centipede demon clinging to a wall before it drops down to battle when you enter its arena. Aside from the foreshadowing thing to bring even more life to the world, you won't see many large landscapes, but you'll see how large and connected the world is structurally when you can see certain areas from certain places. Like how you can see the demon ruins from the Tomb of Giants, or seeing the crystals from the Duke's archives from Anor Londo. Speaking of Anor Londo, easily the prettiest area in the game, it's such a great moment when you first arrive there after defeating the Iron Golem. However, the price of the game's beauty is the frame rate shitting itself on Xbox 360, PS3, and Prepare to Die edition on PC. The game clocks in at an inconsistent 30 FPS and tends to dip below it frequently depending on the area. Blighttown is infamous simply because the frame rate drops down to the single digits when playing in that area. It's probably due to how complex the level design is in the area, but it's really a pain in the ass nonetheless. In the music, god damn, it's great. There's rarely ever music playing in the overworld. It's only really in boss fights and the occasional hub area, but the boss tracks that do play are great. It can be mysterious, scary, intense, or even sad. Either way, all of them are very fitting. Now, before we do get into the finale, this game did receive paid DLC, and it's really, really damn good. Best parts of the game material here. It doesn't even feel like it's required to own to make Dark Souls feel like a complete package. It's just great to have an extension to the base game, which is exactly how I like DLC in games.
DLC? That stands for delisted cum.
Getting to it is honestly rather difficult, and I'd recommend looking up a guide for how to access it. Although that could just be me being an patient bastard. But you're taken back in time when Knight Artorias was alive, and you tackle great new areas and 4 amazing bosses. Okay, well, the Sanctuary Guardian isn't really anything special, but you fight a corrupted Knight Artorias who is one of the best boss fights in the game. And Manus, oh boy! Can't be that hard, right? Manus is probably the hardest boss in the game if you aren't prepared. He's found this super creepy version of the Abyss, and you can even find Knight Artorias' guardian, Sif, to help fight Manus with you. It does make his boss fight in the game much sadder though. Oh, and there's also Black Dragon Calamite, who will basically insta-kill you if you go into his arena while he's still flying, but if you go back and visit this blind giant when you spot his arena, you get this incredibly awesome moment where even though he's completely blind, he manages to shoot down Calamite with ease. So fucking cool. And the boss itself is pretty good for a dragon boss. Fun, challenging, and fair. All of the remastered versions come with the DLC now, but if you just so happen to still own the original Dark Souls on Xbox 360 or PS3, the DLC is definitely worth the money if you want even more greatness from the world of Dark Souls. But now, it's time for the finale. Once you collect the souls of the 4 lords, you open the gate to the stairway down to the final area of the game, the Kiln of the First Flame. It isn't a very long area, it's just some night enemies on a road to the boss, though it does take a while to get there. And then you're met with the final battle with Gwyn, Lord of Cinder. No cutscene, no dialogue, nothing. Just a sudden battle, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I already mentioned the sad music before, but it is a rather tragic final boss. He's very difficult if you don't know how to parry, but he's honestly the easiest boss in the game to parry, so he goes down really quick if you can parry all of his attacks. Even the first big jump attack he does at the beginning of the fight. But once he's down, you win. You link the fire, and the cycle continues, ending Dark Souls. Well, you can link the fire, but there is a second ending. You can actually turn around and leave if you want, as you become the new Lord of Darkness. Which one is the good ending? I don't know, that's really up to you. It's kind of interesting because it's either would you rather continue the ongoing cycle that's been happening for ages, or would you rather become the new Lord of Darkness and do whatever evil stuff that comes with, including possibly ending the world? I don't know. I need to read more of the lore on this game. But wait! We aren't done yet. Well, for one thing, no matter what ending you pick, you'll be thrown to New Game Plus, so you keep playing the game regardless of what ending you pick. But in 2018, they released a remaster of this game, which is the version I've been playing. Is it the definitive version of the game? It's weird. It released for all major platforms, and it slightly increased the textures and bumps the frame rate to a buttery smooth 60 FPS, and it doesn't drop the whole way through. Even Blighttown doesn't drop, which is a weird sight if you played the original. Other than that, some quality of life changes were made, like being able to use multiple consumable items at once like in the games after, having network passcodes like in Bloodborne. It also comes with the DLC included, like Prepare to Die Edition, and that's kinda it. I kinda feel like this remaster is buggier than the original, like some graphical issues, and the online is not good. PvP in Remastered is incredibly jank. Plus this remaster launched for $40 when Prepare to Die Edition was less on Steam. And Prepare to Die Edition was taken off of Steam, and they didn't even offer Remastered for free for people who own Prepare to Die. Just a half-off coupon for a limited amount of time, and that deal's over now. It also released for the Switch, and you know what? For it being remastered, it's a decent port. A mostly stable 30 FPS, I believe it's 1080p and docked, and all of the quality of life improvements of the other versions are here. But I think the textures are the same as the original, which is expected to be honest, but there's one glaring flaw with the Switch version. The audio quality is absolutely awful. It sounds so muffled, like it's being played underwater. and it's really not pleasant to listen to with headphones or on the Switch's speakers. I get why they did this, so they could fit the whole game on the cartridge, but man, could they not have released a post-launch update that fixes the low-quality audio? It's really not a good listen and can take you out of the experience, honestly. But back to the question, is Remastered the definitive version of the game? Not really. It's the more accessible version since it's on all major platforms and has the quality of life improvements, but something about it just feels more jank than the original. It's a pretty mediocre release considering how hyped up it was when it was announced at the Nintendo Direct Mini in January 2018, only to really feel like an upscale port.
It's really interesting because the day before Dark Souls Remastered was announced, me and my friend were actually playing Dark Souls Prepare to Die Edition on PC through multiplayer, and we were talking about how cool a Switch port of the game would be to have Dark Souls on the go. Literally the next day it was announced for the Switch and everything else. It was a crazy coincidence. Kinda unfortunate the remaster turned out the way it was, but it is what it is.
But let's not undermine the actual quality of Dark Souls itself. Dark Souls is an amazing game. From the world, to the gameplay, to the story you can invest yourself into if you feel like it, to the memorable bosses, I can't recommend this game enough, remastered or original. It does have flaws that come more apparent to me during my revisit, but considering it's the first game in the Dark Souls series and the second game of this type, From Software should still be proud of what they accomplished. In my opinion, they created one of the most recognizable games in modern history, and its legacy would affect the entire industry with games like it, From Software's future popularity, and how we view challenge and difficulty in games. The game's challenge may be a turnoff for some who don't like difficult games, and I can understand that. But what I can say is, if you can embrace the difficulty and stay dedicated enough to conquer the game's challenge, attempt to overcome it, there's a whole world of interesting locations, characters, and story to uncover here.
Who knows when or if I'll ever get around to talking about Dark Souls 2, but Dark Souls is a phenomenal game that I think everyone should go out and play. If you skip to the end of the review to see my thoughts of the game, trying to avoid spoilers, the game's highly recommended. I definitely recommend you go buy it, remastered or not. And if the game's just too hard for you, maybe Dark Souls isn't really your thing. But this series would then spawn a trilogy and it would become incredibly successful, and then publish more games like it until up to the release of Elden Ring, which has released to very massive critical acclaim. So, Dark Souls was definitely impactful on the game industry and From Software as a whole. But next time, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be tackling the sequel to Dark Souls, Crash Bandicoot.